one of the things that we realized, my wife and I, as chiropractors, is that a lot of people in the service world, they don't want to be entrepreneurs. It's like this taboo thing. They don't think that they should have to market or sell their services. They're just like, I'm so good, people are just going to start lining up to see me. And we wanted to write a piece that would help service providers to literally fall in love with the idea of being an entrepreneur.
On today's episode of the Hero of the Hour podcast, Mark chats with Dr. Shawn Dill, a highly sought out chiropractor, author, speaker, and CEO of Black Diamond Consulting. In this episode, they discuss Dr. Dill's extensive chiropractic practice in Costa Rica. They also touch on Dr. Dill's thoughts on why he believes everyone has an obligation to be wildly successful. Not only that, you'll get an exclusive look into the origin of his best-selling book, None of Your Business. Something Dr. Dill said that really stuck with me is that everyone has something to provide, and that is the secret. Get ready for an incredible episode. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Mark Murphy, founder and CEO of Northeast Private Client Group and the author of my latest book, The Ultimate Investment. I'm happy to have somebody that I truly respect. In fact, Shawn, you may not know this, but we call it the Hero of the Hour podcast because I have, I just interview people that I think are either heroes to me or heroes to other people. I think you're in both categories. And, I just am excited to talk to you. So I think sort of the topic that we're going to talk today is relationships over revenue. But all I can tell you is that there are an awful lot of people that own a business that think they're entrepreneurs. And they really aren't entrepreneurs. They bought themselves a job. So as somebody that is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur and coaches entrepreneurs all over the world, I just want to welcome you to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. And what a touching way to start. The hero of the hour. I appreciate that.
I also, you and your wife are fellow authors as well. And you've got the name of your book is None of Your Business, which I think you can get at Amazon and you can tell people where else they can get it because I think it's an amazing read. But tell me how you came up with the idea, the concept, and tell people what they'd read in None of Your Business.
Well, the first part of that is the inspiration comes from one of my mentors, Michael Port, who wrote the New York Times bestselling book, Book Yourself Solid, for service providers to help them to get booked solid. And I was fortunate enough to meet him and work with him for a number of years. And one of the things that we realized, my wife and I, as chiropractors, is that a lot of people in the service world, they don't want to be entrepreneurs. It's like this taboo thing. They don't think that they should have to market or sell their services. They're just like, I'm so good, people are just going to start lining up to see me. And we wanted to write a piece that would help service providers to literally fall in love with the idea of being an entrepreneur. It's not just something that we have to do begrudgingly, but that we can actually romantically love this thing of being an entrepreneur because of the doors that it opens. And ultimately, for service providers, what it does for us is it allows us to see or reach more people, make an even bigger impact, which is what we're all trying to do. And then, of course, as a byproduct, we get the lifestyle that goes along with that.
When people initially, when you say sort of where you started, you and Lacey own 13 chiropractic practices. You're both doctors. That would be overwhelming in a full-time job. Plus, for everybody else on the planet except you two, you have to wear a cape with an S on your chest to do it. But when I say you're an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, do you want to share a little bit about your chiropractic business? But the thing that where I first got to know you was through the Black Diamond Club. And I'd love to tell people start anywhere you like. Start with chiropractic, but tell people what the Black Diamond Club is.
Well, I cut my teeth in chiropractic. I practiced in Costa Rica for many, many years, and I built what is arguably the world's largest. The type of chiropractic I did is upper cervical. Built a massive upper cervical practice there. Subsequently, my two daughters were entering into school, and so I didn't love the schooling system in Costa Rica. So we moved back here. And then when I got here, I realized like people didn't practice chiropractic the way that I was doing it in Costa Rica, and people began to ask me. And so actually what we did is we started a franchise. So the franchise is called the Specific Chiropractic Centers. And then we began to scale up the offices there. And then other people that weren't chiropractors started to ask, can you help me? And I was like, well, that's an interesting thing. And then that's where Michael Port entered in, began to mentor with him, and began helping other service providers, because the concepts are the same: marketing and sales. And then, the money part of it, all of that is the same. People are people, people want help. And so we started this thing called the Black Diamond Club. Initially, we just had about probably 50 people that were, in a community on Facebook, and we started to put out a weekly podcast and speak to them. And today, I think right before the recording of this podcast, we're at 725 members in the group. We do live events. We've been blessed through this idea of relationships to meet some really amazing other entrepreneurs and put on some collaborations with them. But we also own 7 Everbowl stores, the acai bowls. And so we dabble on that. And then, of course, as our relationship and our work with you, we have our hands in a few real estate things here and there, and just other entrepreneurial early stage startups. Lacey and I, probably you would tell us to probably stop putting so much money in those moonshots, but we have a passion for those as well.
A passion part. I can't remember with all the conversations we've had if we ever talked to Mike about Michael and Amy Port, but I think they wrote a blurb for my book. I literally have sent every one of my advisors to Heroic Public Speaking to tutor under Michael and Amy, and in fact, I cannot tell you how many I've encouraged United States senators and congressmen and politicians to go there. I think anybody who speaks even one-on-one for a living, much less in front of thousands of people, I think they can help, and I think they are brilliant, and they've been incredibly helpful to me as well. In fact, their organization helped write my second book.
Oh, go figure. So Michael was testing Heroic Public Speaking. So before Heroic Public Speaking, and I think I was one of the very first test subjects.
Wow.
And then he actually created a virtual program that it was filmed in San Francisco, and I lived there at the time. And so I called him and I said, would you let Lacey go onto the program? And so you can still buy this program. It's out there somewhere. And so you can see young Lacey learning how to command the presence and how to deliver a message. So it's a fascinating thing. And I 100% agree. Heroic Public Speaking is A+. Anybody that wants to deliver a message and you're inspired to do that, maybe you have a little bit of fear, you don't know how to structure your talk. That's Michael and Amy are the best.
I mean, it was, I did a fair amount of speaking, but, it was just terrific. But, they're not here today, but I know we both honor them quite a bit. So there's 725 members, and I know you're growing like rapidly. Who are the kind of folks? So if I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, who are the types of folks that get attracted and they say, I've got to be part of the Black Diamond Club? Who are they? Who are they? Who's your target? Who are the people what kind of problems are they having? What kind of needs do they have where somebody goes, this is, just like we work with Michael and Amy, they got to work with Shawn and Lacey.
Well, they're service providers. They provide a service out to the world. They have a big vision. So, the common thing is like, man, if more people knew what I know, if more people knew what I did, I'd really be able to impact the world. And they see that as that's the obstacle. They know that what they have, they're sitting on this gold mine, but they just don't know how to piece it together. So they don't understand, or they struggle with feeling good about marketing, or they don't understand it. They're like, what am I supposed to do? Just put an ad in the yellow pages, or social media, what's working today? How do I structure it? And then they have struggles or difficulties around sales. When we provide a service, because it's not a tangible thing. So I come to you, and maybe if you're a psychologist, you talk to me and I get a benefit, but I didn't leave with something in my hands. And so how do we place a value around that? And how do we get comfortable with charging people? And so when you are super excited and passionate about this thing that you do, but there's this gap, and that gap is business, it's sales, it's marketing, Black Diamond Club helps you to fill in that gap. But I'll tell you what, even more important for me is that Black Diamond Club is a community. It's a network of supportive individuals. There's a lot of sort of groups that you might be plugged into, and especially if they get to be larger sized, where there's a lot of sort of maybe competition, or, hey, look at me, the peacock feathers come out. What really makes me very proud is on any given day, in our community, you might see somebody say, hey guys, I made my first $100 today. And you'll see all these people saying, cheering them up and saying, that's great. And then 5 hours later, you might have someone say, listen, my trailing year, I just clipped 3 million. And the same response. Nobody's like, well, if you're doing 3 million or 5 million or 10 million, you must be cheating. We support each other, and we want to see everybody win. And I think, if you also are longing for that in your life, Black Diamond Club is a place for you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, I'm trying to think of any business that would not need Black Diamond Club. And the one thing that I appreciate with what you do is that there are so many different ways you can enter it, that it's affordable for everybody. There's not one business that can afford it. And there's all kinds of levels of things that you can do that I think the very fact that, there's an awful lot of people that help people at the very, very high end. And I don't think anybody does it better than you guys do. But I love also the fact that you're bringing in I think you can get in for as low as, I think, $99 a month with a very basic program that you have. And I got to tell you that there are so many people that are starting out or are not making money in the beginning or don't know what to do, but they want to be entrepreneurs. They just don't have a roadmap. And I think that's, I think that to me is serving the greater good by allowing everybody to be part of the community. And you've got tools, resources, and techniques at all levels, from the very most successful and the wealthiest to folks that are just starting out. And I respect that and appreciate that a lot. How did this develop? Now this is you're at 725. Do you want to tell people some of the cool things that you're doing? I know you've got a trip to a castle in Scotland coming up. You've got there's some really wild things. And all I can tell you is that I've got to meet a lot of people that you're coaching, and I could not have met more gracious people who had gratitude for what you've done and have appreciated the role that you've played in their life. I mean, to a person.
Yeah, our team has a passion for live events. We love getting people together. Building community is one of our biggest values. And so we do a lot of cool things. Like you said, we've done experiential masterminds on a private island in the Caribbean. We took a group to the Indy 500 last year. And this year, yes, we're going to the Kinross Castle in Scotland coming up in June. And those bigger masterminds are done in partnership with my good friend, David Meltzer. He and I go and we take a group of about 20 people. And across 3 days, we sit in round table, and we literally break apart your business. We discuss what's working and what can be improved, and we provide insights. We eat great food, we drink great wine, and more importantly, I want to come back to that. I super appreciate all of the kind words, but I really want everybody to know the real value is in the community. It's in the other people. I love to go to different events, and yeah, maybe like even if I go to an event and Mark Murphy's speaking or Lisa's speaking, and I'm like, this is great, and that's fantastic. But the real value is everybody else that's in that room, because we all came to the event because we were in pursuit of something similar, maybe not the exact same thing, but we're on a similar journey. And when we can meet people and find that commonality, that really is what propels the growth. I mean, yeah, the person on the stage is great. It's fantastic for me to have the opportunities. I mean, I'm the one that gets to meet you. You've been super gracious, and we've done super cool things together. But for somebody that's thinking about like, hey, I think I want to be a part of that, it's not just me. It's everybody who's a part of the group. And like you said, you've been able to meet some of them. I got to tell you, these are some amazing human beings, as are the listeners of your podcast. I mean, everybody has something to provide and value. And I think that's the secret. If we can join them and connect them, then really amazing things come out of it.
It is interesting, but there's clearly, you're the epitome of the law of attraction, meaning you and Lacey serve other people. You elevate other people clearly. And it's not a coincidence that the people that are attracted to the Black Diamond Club are people that have a similar mind thought. If they were just about raping and pillaging and revenue only, or all those other, any word you want to say, I don't think they would have found the Black Diamond Club. But isn't it interesting that as long as the people we work with are people, and as long as the clients, customers, or patients are people, we're not in the chiropractic business or in the financial services business or in the widget business. We're in the people business. And it's amazing to me that very smart people, and you coach a lot of very successful, smart people, how that's such a revelation to them. Why do you think that is, that something that in many ways would seem so basic is such a mystery?
Well, because it's easy, and especially when we're talking about things that require any sort of formal training, it's easy to get caught up in the formal training part, right? So you have to go to school to learn a craft, and you just spend all of your time immersed in that. And it's easy then to place your value only on the thing that you do. And I think that's very, first of all, honorable, right? Because you dedicated your life to that. But then what you realize is, well, there's other people that do what I do, right? There's other dentists, there's other financial planners, there's other lawyers. Why would somebody pick me? And interestingly, it's not because of what you do. Like, I picked you because you're a dentist. It's because of who you are. It becomes more about understanding that people are choosing you because of what you put out, not because of what you do. And then the last thing I'll speak to too, I think it's interesting because I've watched people on the journey. One of the things that and I know that you speak to this. Let me see if I can use your words. Is you evolve from getting paid for what you do to what you know, right? And so you also see this idea of mentorship or being collegial and raising others up, because you all of a sudden drop this idea of competition because you realize that we're in the people business. So people have choices, and I resonate with certain people, you resonate with certain people, but believe me, there's plenty of people that I don't resonate with. There's plenty of people that don't like me. And you know what? That's okay, because there's other people that do what I do that will be able to service them. And I think that expansion of the consciousness and the mindset to where you realize, like, I wasn't put on this earth to serve everybody. But one of my revelations was, well, if I understand that, well, I better get busy finding the people that I was put on this earth to serve, because it would be a shame if I was put on this earth to serve somebody, but I was sitting on my couch, or I was wallowing in pity, or I didn't want to learn marketing. And therefore I missed opportunities to make an impact. And so I think that's a really great thing as you begin to understand it really isn't even about the thing that you do. It's about the service that you provide into the world.
That is there's such incongruency, I think, today with people. I want to be successful, but I want to sleep till noon, or I want to be successful, but I'm not willing to go out and find new customers. It's like I find the incongruity with people. Do you think that's do you think what percentage of people do you think are coachable, where they sit down and go, "Hey, Shawn, please help me. I want to do better, but I'm obviously have behavior that's not working or is incongruent." Do you think you can take do you think, as an example, you can take transactional people and make them transformational?
Yes, that can occur. But let me tell you what the litmus test of that is. The people that say, I want to be successful, but then they don't work, honestly, they don't really want to be successful, especially if they receive guidance and somebody's like, hey, listen, it happens a lot in healthcare, right? Like, well, I went to school because I thought that, doctors only work 3 days a week. Like, okay, well, maybe they do after 40 years of practice, but that's not how they start. And so you have to, the litmus test is I think that people really are misguided by their goals and aspirations. And I think that what happens a lot of times is that people are told that this is what you should do, maybe from your parents. So maybe early on, your parents were like, you need to be a doctor or a lawyer, and this becomes part of your programming. But then later on in life, your colleagues start to tell you, in the healthcare space, the first benchmark is you want to have $1 million practice. And I always tell people, like, where did that come from? Why do you really want $1 million? If that's what you really want, then you could begin to string along the steps of what it would take to get there. You would seek coaching and mentorship, and you would understand that if that's truly what I wanted, this is what I would have to do. If I wanted to compete in a bodybuilding competition, but I didn't like going to the gym, that's not going to work out, right? And so I think we have to begin with, what is it that you really are trying to do? I think one of the great things about entrepreneurship is it allows you to build the final product that you want, right? But I think that a lot of people don't know the final product as they're going into the deal. So they kind of look around, they ask some people, and then they start building other people's houses. It's like, if you're the architect of your life, you're not going to use someone else's blueprint. And so too often people are using someone else's blueprint. And so it just doesn't resonate. It doesn't fit. That's why they struggle.
Oh, that makes perfect sense to me. I also wonder, when you talk about entrepreneurs, what is your when you talk about entrepreneurs, we talked about that with the people you coach. What percentage of the people, like I find, like when I'll go to a room of service providers or business owners, and I'll ask them how many people are entrepreneurs, and they almost all raise their hand. And in about 30 seconds, they realize they probably have, have not are not entrepreneurs. They more bought themselves a job, maybe a good paying job, maybe a very successful job, but a job. When you say entrepreneur, as a true entrepreneur, when you say entrepreneur, what do you mean by entrepreneur? What is that definition of entrepreneurism to you?
Well, first of all, I absolutely agree. In fact, it's one of the concepts in the book about people who, they had a job and then they're like, oh, screw this, I'm going to go become an entrepreneur. But really what they realize is now they just work for themselves. Working for yourself is not the same thing as being an entrepreneur. Just because you're the boss and now you are also, the integrator or operator or laborer, you just created the exact same situation that you had previous to that. If I were to ask my clients initially, what are you pursuing? What is the end result? And again, this is, I think, just programming. People will often tell me, I'm looking for freedom. I want freedom financially, and I want freedom from time. Basically, what I want is I want to be able to do what I want when I want. Now, these are all very common goals because I think it's said a lot. But I oftentimes stop back and I'm like, okay, but let's say, if you're passionate about, the work that you do, you, Mark, I know you don't have to work. You don't have to do this podcast. We don't have to be recording this. This isn't going to make a difference in you being able to make ends meet. So then we look at you and we say, well, what is Mark pursuing? And I think it all comes down to options. And again, I think this you have to define. But we want the option. I want the option to be able to go in and do the thing that I'm passionate about, but I also want the option to not. I want the option to be able to fly private, or I want the option to be able to fly commercial. I want the option to take a month off, but I also want the option to work that whole month. And I think that really begins to define that entrepreneurial journey, the reason why we sacrifice, because it's not easy. In the beginning, you make these sacrifices because we're trading options. We're moving up to where we have options. You can cash them in or you cannot. Most people that I know that actually achieve this freedom, like, wow, you did it. You had an exit and now you don't have to work. They end up going back to work because they're like, that wasn't what I was chasing. What we're all really chasing is options. So I think that a true entrepreneur is building something, and it doesn't even have to be a business. We're building something that provides us options.
One of the things I always have a great appreciation for, now that I have my son, Lucas, who you know well, and may have more family members in our business, in these closely held family businesses, you work with your wife. She's your partner. She's your partner in every, and it seems to work beautifully. What challenges do you think people have that work with their family members or with their spouse? Is that because I'm not sure if I want to spend that much time with myself,
Well, it can become a tremendous advantage or disadvantage. And I got to tell you, so it wasn't always super easy for us because when we started out, what happens is, when you are married, or, even if you, probably not with a son or daughter, because there is a degree of hierarchy there.
Yeah.
But when you're married, you're like, we're both equal. And I think that that's the part that causes all of the challenge. And there was a point when Lacey and I sat down and I said, what I really feel like has happened to us is that we are two people doing the work of one. Like there could be one person doing all of this, but we're choosing to do it as two. And that's not effective or efficient. And what we have to do is find a way to be two people doing the work of four. And so, super cliche, but number one is communication. It is that. It is being able to say, look, we have to be on the same page so that we're not just duplicating efforts and sitting down. You come in because you want to pitch, and then there's just two of us sitting here, and we're looking at each other. It could just be one. But the second part of that for me was being very clear about our roles. So we had to sit down and say, okay, listen, and I'm talking about in everything. Like, what do you do? What are you in charge of? And what do I do? And what am I in charge of? A lot of it has to do, Lacey has this very brilliant, and if anybody wants it, they can email me, Shawn@blackdiamondclub.com. It's very simple, but she has this thing called a delegation matrix. And, you take a look at, what are the things that you do that you are really good at and you love doing, right? So you're like, I'm really good at this and I love it. What are the things that you are terrible at and you hate doing? And then you have the in-betweens, right? So you have what you are kind of okay at and you hate doing it. And then you have, I love doing it, but you're not so good at it, right? And so then we're able to then look at these things and delegate and say, look, all of the things that I'm really good at and I love, I should take those. And all the things that you're really good at and you love, you should take those. And then we have to have a discussion about the things in the middle. And we've got to make sure that we're never doing things that we're bad at and we hate doing, right? So we might have to, that'll fill in with hiring or delegation. And once we're clear on it, we just execute. So I don't sit around and second guess Lacey, like, oh, I wonder if this thing got done or if this decision's being made, because I know that's her role. And I know even though she's not an employee, because there's other parts where it's reversed, right? That has allowed us to amplify our power because there's two of us. Imagine that you as the CEO or as the owner of your business, you were actually two people. That would be even more powerful than where it is now. And people always ask that question, how do you do it? And the real key is, effective communication and delegation and respect for each other's roles.
Yeah. By the way, I can't think of anything better than to work in your unique ability most of the time. And, and by the way, if you're not doing the crappy stuff or the stuff you're not very good at, you're working in creation fascination mode all the time. The time goes by pretty quickly because you're God, how sad do I feel for people who are counting the minutes to the end of the day or the end of the week to the weekend or to the retirement date, where I think guys like us don't have enough hours in the day. We're so excited to get to work. We just want to make sure we get it all in.
The great Joe Dispenza talks about this, and I want to pull everybody back to our childhood days. When you talk about like the creation fascination mode, when young kids are playing, the old days when you'd play outside, and then you would be called in. Your parents would say, "Hey, Mark, it's time to come in." When you're in a true state of play, you lose track of all time and space. And look at kids. They're like, what? And they're like, yeah, it's dinner time. And they're like, but I'm not hungry. How many times have you been working? And then at the end of the day, you're like, I forgot to eat lunch. But then they say, hey, but it's getting cold out. At least come and put a jacket on. And they say, but I'm not cold, right? You lose yourself in the state of play. And to your point, how cool would it be if you created a world where your work, activities that you get paid for, were all play, where you went in and you lost yourself in a state of time and space. Time flies by. You forget to eat. You don't know if it's hot or it's cold. And then all of a sudden people are turning off the lights and you're like, what? That's it? The day's over? For me, that's what it's all about, is trying to find that space in our lives.
What's so fascinating when I think about it is I work like you. I work like a lunatic. I am just love what I do, but I never feel any stress from the work. It's, if one of the kids is having a problem, or if, something that's external that comes in, or something like that kind of stuff, stress, that stuff stresses me out to no end. But the work stuff never had any stress because I'm in control and I'm in my playground when I'm here. And so there's zero stress. So it doesn't, even if you work an 18-hour day after day, not that I do every day, but you work these crazy hours, it doesn't seem like work. If it seemed like work, I would quit. Right. I want to pay you a compliment also too, because in all the time we've spent together, both in business and socially and in the middle, one of the things that I admire about your relationship with Lacey is I've seen you interact where you were clearly partners. And I've also seen you clearly interact when you were partners in business. I've seen you interact when you were husband and wife. and I've seen you interact as friends. Meaning that in a way where the thing that I from somebody who advises family businesses for many years, like myself, I find that oftentimes the business relationship supersedes everything, and the friendship and the marriage takes a back seat. Meaning Thanksgiving dinner is just another board meeting. Or getting away on a romantic weekend is just another reason to talk about the problems at the office, or the challenges or the opportunities. And I think that one of the things where I've interacted with you, and the reason I asked that question earlier about the two of you is because I think you do that superbly.
Oh, thank you. And I think that oftentimes people talk about boundaries. Just to that point, we don't have like a rule that like, hey, after 5 o'clock, we don't talk about that. But I think that it's the environment dictates, kind of where we are. And I think that because we have found a degree of success, we have a life where we do have options. And so inside of those options, we're able to understand that when we're in a social setting, or even just for ourselves, when we're disconnecting, we're not bringing business into those conversations. So that doesn't mean that at 7:30 at night, we get a message or a phone call that we don't go back into business mode and say, oh no, it's past 5 o'clock. And I know a lot of people that do that they're like, hey, after a certain time, I just disconnect. But we just kind of navigate it, I think, environmentally.
Yeah, I remember when I first came, talking about the club, I talk about, reminding me of something when I first started, where as an advisor, you'd go out to lunch with some of the senior guys once in a while. And I was like 22 or 23. And they had a rule: you couldn't talk business. You could only talk about sports and sex. And after a couple of lunches, I realized two things. None of them knew anything about sports, and none of them were having sex. So I only wanted to talk to them about business. So I'd be a little crass, or a little tongue in cheek. But no, I think that's I just reminded of those days. Black Diamond Club has gotten so successful so quickly, but I know you're always forward thinking. What do you think? What would be the next iteration? What do you think Black Diamond will be doing in 3 years from now, or 5 years from now? How do you think it'll change? What is the vision that you see to add even more value to the people you're working with?
Well, I see us getting a little bit broader. A lot of our clients are in the healthcare space, and now there's a couple of opportunities for us to expand our verticals into other industries, other dynamics, other communities. And I also see on the higher end side too, more opportunities, relationships like you. One of the problems that occurs in doing good consulting. So you take somebody who's maybe a startup or an intermediate business, and you give them some guidance and they become successful. Well, as when you're creating wealth, that creates problems if you don't know how to navigate it. Because all of a sudden your, as you call it, the money machine is spitting off all of this money, and you're like, well, I don't know what to do, right? I don't know what to do relative to taxes. I don't know what to do relative to investing. And so, I value and cherish relationships with people like you, because, and we've had you speak to our groups, because I do see that as sort of a next level. And the next level beyond that, I think it would be interesting if we could discover a way, and I know it would be challenging, but to plant these seeds into the mind of the young entrepreneur, or let's say the young business. I mean, not by age, but you're starting a business, and understanding that I'm creating this money machine, and I would like to have an investment or a financial plan on the back end. I think that will give them a lot more success. I run into this, and I don't know about you, but I run into a lot of clients, and then usually there's kind of like this sort of, you could tell like they want to talk to you about something that they're embarrassed about. And I'm like, okay, well, just what's going on? And they're like, well, taxes. And I tell them, look, almost every single successful entrepreneur that I've ever worked with has had an IRS problem, because they made so much money, they didn't know that they were going to owe that much money. And so they're on a payment plan. There's no shame in that. And a lot of them, almost all of them, have had credit problems at some time in their lives. Why? Because they're big risk takers. But I look at this and I think, well, what if there was a way that we could avoid that pitfall? Not so much because of what it costs them monetarily, but because it impacts their self-confidence. People are always ashamed. And that's what I mean. They're like, well, I have this problem, Shawn. And it's hard to do successful business, which they are successful. That's why they have the problem. But it's hard to do that when you feel like, I'm a loser because I'm not paying my taxes and, now my credit score is dropping and all of these things. And I think if we could avoid that, long term, a true plan where we could literally take someone by the hand and guide them into, a multiple 7-figure business.
One of the things that I'm sort of passionate about, I think, as a fellow entrepreneur, I think entrepreneurs are an endangered species, not only because of all the regulation, not only because of the capital requirements, but when we were young, people that were successful and entrepreneurs were revered. Now I think there's a culture where people should be embarrassed about their success. You should be embarrassed, Shawn, that you and Lacey have worked your what off for all these decades to create success and wealth. And like, you should be embarrassed by that. And I think that should be celebrated. I never got, one of the things that is a pet peeve to me is people that have just enough are some of the most selfish people I know historically, because they don't have anything else for anybody else. They have just enough for themselves. And I think one of the things that entrepreneurs do is they lift other people up. They elevate other people. It's not just about creating wealth for themselves. It's about creating wealth for their community. It's about giving back. It's a legacy. It's providing jobs and opportunities that entrepreneurs have. I get a kick out of all of the people that I've not only helped them buy their house, but educate their kids because of what we created. You've done that. And we've done that for how many thousands of people? If we extrapolate that from the work we've done, it might be hundreds of thousands between us. And people, there's a kind of a subculture out there, or maybe even not even a subculture, who's trying to tell us we should be embarrassed for that. What do you tell people who are entrepreneurs in your group?
Well, you cannot give what you don't have. And most of the people that I work with, and I think that's a good sort of qualifier, they have a big service heart. And so they want to be able to give. If you can't afford to pay your rent and keep the lights on, well, the service is over. And so that's literally where it starts. Like, you have an actual obligation to be wildly successful if you're actually trying to service the world. Look, if we were selling pens, maybe there is some argument there, like, well, why'd you have to sell billions of pens and you had enough? And that's really not a good argument. But if you're serving, there's an endless supply of service, which also, too, as you were saying, that kind of an interesting conversation I'd love to have with you is, one of the things is that Lacey and I have done is to hack this idea where you're like, people that don't have, they're kind of like, hoarding their own, and that is passed down from your parents. And I think that's a part of the shift, is that, culturally, my parents told me, the holy grail was, hopefully you'll be successful enough one day to buy a house. And so you go into this thing of like, I'm saving all my money because I want to buy a house. Like, that was what's happening. Today's younger generation, we're seeing they're not buying houses. They rent and they do other things. So there's a financial shift. But one of the big realizations that Lacey and I had is that it's not a zero-sum game. That, I think that part of it is to think that, well, my gain is someone else's loss. And I think this got proven over the pandemic, where just poof, we can just manufacture money. And part of that too is that and people always say this, like, the government printed trillions of dollars, but they didn't actually print anything, because if we had to print it, it would have taken a long time for us to have gotten that printed money into the hands of the people. So now in today's world, money is electronic. It's a fantasy. It's a very faith-based system, and people don't like to talk about that or embrace that. But if we're in a world where we can just, boom, alter the ledger, this is fantasy land. This is fictitious. So it's not a zero-sum game. So you actually have an obligation to be wildly successful so that you can fulfill your life's mission on the planet. Now, if you become wildly successful and you hoard it all, I think that's wrong, because what was the point of it? But if you became wildly successful so that you could give bigger, that you could make a bigger impact, I think that's the name of the game for every single man, woman, and child on the planet.
I just say an amen to that. One of the things I know you and Lacey talk a lot about, and we talk a lot about, and it was a discovery from, doing this for as long as I've done it, is that you would go in to see somebody that was in some financial trouble, maybe one of those people that you talked about a few minutes ago that might be in some IRS trouble, or might be in some debt, or might have something upside down somewhere in their life. and you went in there and you fixed the problem and you cleaned up the mess and you gave them like a fresh start. And you go, wow. And you patted yourself on the back and you said, oh my God, I've changed these people's lives. And you come back a year or two later and their problems were, and you helped them grow their business and you doubled their income or tripled their income. And you go, oh my God, we've done such great work for these people. They should love us. And then we come back a year or 2 years later and they're in 5 times the mess because we've doubled or tripled their income, which maybe made their problems 10x because they had bad values around money. They still have the same bad behaviors around money, the same bad habits, the same bad things, and the mindset. And until we changed that mindset, it was like all we were doing is giving a fifth of vodka to an alcoholic. We were doing no good work. They would have been better off in debt hell and dealing with that than what occurred and thinking we're doing such a good job. Do you see a lot of that? I know you guys coach to that. I know I coach to that a lot. I'd love to hear your comment on that.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to my point earlier, where I think a lot of people, they were telling you like, hey, I'm in this situation and I need your help. One, the situation they didn't want, but then, when they got out of it, they had ill-defined goals. They didn't know where they were going. And so, yeah, the car gets going, 100 miles, 150 miles an hour. And they're like, whoa, and they get nervous. I relate to that like skiing. Like you start skiing and if you get going real fast and you're like, wow, I'm going too fast. And now I don't have like a lot of options. I can either just tumble or I'm not really sure what to do. I think that happens to a lot of business owners and businesses. I think that there's also something to, you realize that you've built this big business and then there's sacrifices that need to be made. And maybe you didn't know about them or you're not prepared to make those sacrifices like you might, miss your child's soccer practice. And you're like, I don't know if I signed up for this. And that is something that I deal with a lot with people. I talk about in my book how when my daughters were young, where they were very young, and this is a very controversial position, but I missed a lot of their stuff. Like I missed their, talent show or, cheer tryouts and things. And I'm not saying I was an absentee father, but there were some times that I was like, oh, I wish I could go to that, but I didn't because I was building a business. But later on in life, and I've witnessed the same thing with you, I've been around you with your children. Later on in life, my 25 and 22-year-old daughters, well, my oldest daughter, when she was in college, texted me every day. And I would tell my friends that, like, oh, my daughter's texting. And literally, like, oh, it's every day. She texts me every day and just tells me what's up, good, bad, or otherwise. Like, hey, we're going out partying or, I'm studying or whatever she was up to. I remember Lacey and I took our daughters to Australia one spring break and we were sitting at dinner and I was like, so I just want to ask you, did I make a mistake? I made tons of sacrifices and I missed talent shows and practices. And I'm asking you straight up, like, was that a mistake? And my daughters said, until you bring that up, it's not even in our consciousness. I didn't know you missed the talent show. I was 6 years old. Like, why would I know that? But what I do know is the lifestyle that we are afforded today. And I know that that is a product of the sacrifices that you made. And so I think back to your question, I think a lot of people don't have that picture painted of that's what they want. And if you want to spend a lot of time with your kids because that's what you want, that is very honorable. You go to the practices, but you have this conflicting idea of, I want to spend a ton of time with my kids, but I also want to have enough money saved up to send them to any Ivy League school that they want to go to. Those things sometimes aren't necessarily compatible at the same time. And so timing is important as well.
I think, I don't mean to be sexist in this call, but imagine two guys with the angst that we have, because that's always the challenge. Did I do a good enough job? Like, I think I've been a good father, but again, you had the pressures of, I was traveling. Same thing with you. I tried to make everything I could, but I missed some stuff. Was I the best? Could I be the best husband I could be? Could I be the best? Like sometimes like you beat yourself up, and not to be sexist, but I think in our society, women have it even worse. Meaning that they're almost been culturally to think that if they're not perfect, they've done a terrible job as a mother or as a wife or as a business partner or anything. I mean, because imagine, you and I are talking about this, and it's, it's just one of those things where you just, all I can say is, like, I think I did the best I could with the tools that I had. I think I think I threaded the needle as best as I could. I feel like I did a good job. And all I just try to do is improve and learn and just try to make the best decisions that I could make and make the twos with the two. But you're never, it's like going to, I mean, I don't know anybody who said to me, "Oh, I spent too much time with my kids."
Right,
Oh yeah, I spent those kids got enough of me, or well, I was good to my wife in the first couple of years of the marriage, so that's going to have to hold her for the next 20 years. Yeah, I was good to her in 2005, so at 6, so but it's and you never feel like you're doing enough. But I also think that's why you're successful at what you do, Shawn, because the idea is that you want to be your very best. You want to show up in elegance and excellence everywhere in your life, and you want to be the best that you can be and the best person you can be. And again, that's why you have the attraction power. That's why I don't think there's any entrepreneur that couldn't benefit from being a Black Diamond Club member. That's why I tell anybody I know, I'm going to tell them I wouldn't walk to the Black Diamond Club. I'd run and hope they accept me. So I just think you're, I think that you are a special person. I think you've got a special company, and I'm just, what I'm excited about. I'm not excited about, I respect and honor what you've created, but the thing that gets me excited about our relationship is two things. One is I'm excited to see what you're going to create in the next 5 or 10 years, because I think it'll be epic compared to what you've done over the last 10. And I think the second would be that I think if I can be part of it, you and I are going to have a lot of fun and change a lot of lives together over the next decade. And so I just want to tell you, I just want to appreciate you, and I just want to let you know that you've got somebody who not only believes in what you do. I personally would do anything to support you and help you in any way that I could. And just thank you for coming on the podcast.
We love and appreciate you and Lisa and the entire family. And Lacey and I really appreciate you welcoming us in with open arms.